everyone, welcome back to another Spin Less, Scrap More Season 1, Episode 3. So this is the last layout I'm going to do with this collection, and I am following this sketch by Scrapbook Generation. Again, I believe this is another free one they had. They had an online crop. I think it was to help, give everyone something to do during all this time. And so they've actually been releasing quite a few free sketches. So if you haven't checked out any of those sketches lately, I highly suggest, if you need something to do or need some inspiration, go check them out. But I wasn't really sure about this sketch to begin with, but I like how the layout turned out. This is just a really different sketch for me. So I think that these banner strips were like 1 inch by 10 inches. I cut them to be 1 inch by, I think, 11 inches because I had mentioned in this last video that this new banner punch of mine does cut off about 1/2 inch. So I did cut mine. You could easily just freehand the banners. It's kind of funny because this piece here, the punch takes sizes 1, 1.5, and 2, but you can do different sizes. You just got to hold it kind of in the middle a little bit different. So some of these strips fit exactly perfect in the 1 inch spot, and some of them are just slightly bigger. But when I went to trim just a hair off of them, I don't know, they lined up right with the 1 inch spot. So it doesn't really matter. Again, I'm not going to worry if they're slightly off size from one page to the next, because when it's in an album, even if I have this idea to kind of maybe someday either glue or sew my page protectors together that have double pages, so that the pages are closer together, because I use 3 ring albums. And here I am just cutting off that extra 1/2 inch since, like I said, I cut them longer since I knew the punch would make them, I didn't want the punch to make them too short. But even if there was the page protectors right next to each other, there's still going to be a little bit of space. So nobody's going to pay attention to whether or not it lines up 100% or not. So not worried about that at all. I am going to take these. I cut down some. I was just seeing what I had to start with. So I don't have any more, I think, of the blue or the gnomes. Let me look at my layout. I have it right here. I really kind of wanted some of the blue and the gnomes, but only because I really liked that pattern paper. But I had this flower one, and I like this flower one just as much. My only concern with this flower one at the time was because it's so white and it's not really full of flowers, I wanted it to still stand out on the layout, but I definitely wanted to use it. The photos that I am scrapbooking are actually ones of us by a poppy field, and so there's all these red flowers in the layout, and so I definitely wanted to use. A lot of these strips do get covered up, but it is what it is, and I love it. So I cut a few more strips because I needed to make sure that I had enough. I'm going to play around a little bit. It's going to take me a little bit of fiddling. That red just seemed so bold, but I definitely wanted to use the red because, like I said, it is, we're in front of all these red poppy flowers. But I also, at the same time, I didn't really want it to be a pattern like stripes, red flowers, stripes, red flowers. I wanted to kind of mix it up. So I'm just moving them around so that the white kind of flowery, almost white one looks good. And here I'm just showing you that I took a picture. So I did take a second and I inked all the edges black. I didn't record that. I am marking where I think actually looking at the layout, it turns out okay. So it does say on the sketch how far up or how far down these banner strips go from the bottom of the layout, which is one thing I really like about Scrapbook Generations layouts, is that they add that kind of information so you can follow it. So when I was doing it, it does start to, you'll see as I put these banner strips on here, it does start to look like there's a lot more space. And I guess there kind of is. So I do end up with a little bit more space between the top and the top of the strips and the top of the page and the bottom of the strips and the bottom of the page. But once the page is completely done, it doesn't look as noticeable. So I must not have measured right. I don't know what happened there. So that's all I can say. But I am referring to my phone because I didn't want to have to fiddle around with the pattern again. And I'm doing my best to not stick my head in the camera, but still get these lined up, not only straight with the T-square ruler, but trying to get about the equal amount of space. I'm not worrying too much about how much space or how equal it is between each banner set, if that makes any sense. I'm just trying to make it look close and good, because again, if it's off by just a tiny hair, nobody's really going to notice. In fact, I think one of this last bit, I might have even put it just a little bit further apart or closer together, just to make sure that it kind of filled up the space. So now you can see that there's a little bit more space on the top part of that layout there. I was thinking that this would be the right-hand side. Is that actually, yep, that is going to end up being the right-hand side. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking some washi tape that I have, and I actually really like this idea. I might use this in future videos since I do a lot of double pages. You might notice I'm always fiddling with them to line them up together. That's a lot for you guys, but at the same time, it's also for me because I like to have them straight, and it's an OCD thing. I apologize. I can't help it, right? So I just gently put the washi tape down on the top and the bottom, and it held the layout in place, and it worked really well. It was perfect for lining these up together. And you can even notice, if you look at the top two red strips, they're not the same size on the left hand and right side, but I don't care. You don't even notice once everything's done, so it doesn't bother me in the least. If they were extremely noticeable, like if it was a good 1/4 of an inch or something like that off, I might have done something to fix it, but at this point I'm not worried about it in the least. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue down this last piece, and I'm going to leave that washi tape there for most of the video. It actually really helped quite a bit. So couple of the pieces, the only thing that I didn't cut off the center of the right hand side like I had cut off the center of the left hand side, just to kind of make sure that the strips were completely to the edge, but I'm not really that worried about it. So referring to the sketch, it called for, what does it say, 6 photos there, and I have more than that. I debated on a couple of these photos. The flowers, they're just the flowers, and they're not the best of photos. One of them was even in the wrong orientation, but what they had kind of like, it looks like 3x4 blocks. A lot of companies come with 3x4 cut aparts nowadays, and I think that that's what they were intending to have go in those spots. And I wasn't really sure, so I knew I didn't have any 3x4 because I'm down to basically the scraps of this collection, and I didn't even have any pattern paper sizes left large enough to cut to 3x4. So I decided just to cut those photos to 3x4, and we would see how it looked in the end. But when I did that, you can see I started to glue down one of the photos. I figured I would kind of stagger the photos of each of my kids in front of the flowers and then have the flower photos next to it. Well, they all kind of got lost together, and so I decided to cut some white cardstock down to 3x4 and then just trim up the 3 photos of my kids in front of the flowers just a little bit there so that they all had a white border. And the pictures of just the flowers don't have the white border, and I really like the way that it turned out. I didn't know how much it would stick out since they are obviously, all on, there's not much color behind them as it is, but it actually worked out quite a bit. So there's that photo. That photo I just put down was actually meant to go in a different orientation, but luckily for me, it worked out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down, and I'm just, again, staggering the 3 ones of my kids, not only to stagger the white border, but just so the same type of photos are not right next to each other. The other thing I'm doing, I believe that their sketch calls for, you can see that little photo there. I want to say it's probably 2x2 or 2.5 by 2.5. I don't think they have it in the location that I'm going to put it. I think they had it in the top right where that one flower is. And I didn't want to put it there I wasn't even sure if I was going to use it at this point. I wasn't sure what I was going to, again, I didn't really have any paper to fill in that 3x4 area with, and so I just kind of left it for now, and we will come back to that. And I have these two photos over here. I also think the sketch calls for two 4x6 vertical photos. I could be wrong. Again, it's been quite a few days since I did this, but I had one that wouldn't work exactly, so I did trim up one of those photos to be slightly smaller, and then the other one is still just 4x6, the one of me. And I have to say, I didn't really like the thought of me being very prominent in this photo here, or about this layout. I didn't want this layout to be about me in front of the flowers, but all the other photos from that are on the right hand side were horizontal, so they wouldn't work as well over here on the left hand side. I could have made them work, but I didn't want to for this layout. I kind of wanted to follow the sketch a little bit more. So I hope that all makes sense. I did decide to add the same white border, which I did also, again, I did ink all of my edges with my black ink. I did it off camera. And I'm going to stick these photos over here, and I'm not really paying attention to where I'm putting them. I'm just kind of putting them, you know, not straight. I believe that's how they have them on the sketch as well. And then I'm going to come to the title. Am I doing that next? I might be doing, let's take a look here to see what I'm doing. I knew I needed to move my, okay, so I am going to add the stitching. So in the sketch, if you go and look at the sketch, Allison Davis does a lot of stitching on her layouts. Well, there was a bunch of faux stitching on, or I don't know if it was real stitching, but I don't have a sewing machine that I can use, and I'm not even going to go there right now. But the sketch itself had some stitching marks, so you could use one or the other. And so if you look now, you can see I basically added the stitching in the same spots that they did on the layout as well. So the stitching goes all the way across, and I really like the little, I wasn't sure about it, but I like the little subtle texture that it adds. So I'm really happy that I went ahead and went with it. So here I am working on this side, this little 3x4 area, and you can see here I'm just literally down to scraps. I don't even have a piece big enough to mount this photo, but I wanted to use this blue. So what I decided to do was take it, and even though it's not going to fit 100%, I'm going to kind of piece it together. So I'm mounting the top of it onto that square, and then I'm going to take this other little tiny piece and I'm going to line it up, and it's not even going to reach the entire way, but I'm just, you can see kind of maybe there that there's that small little corner. I'm going to give it a second to dry before I go any further, but then I'm going to trim it off. And so basically the bottom right hand corner of that picture is not mounted with that blue paper. However, in the very end, it's all covered up, so it doesn't even matter. And when I was working on this layout, I noticed actually this flower border, which I hadn't really paid attention to before. And it's really cute. It's like a row of flowers in some kind of flower box. And so I knew I wanted to use that. This is the last layout. I knew at this point I wasn't going to be making any more layouts just by the amount of papers that I had left. Like I said, if I didn't even have one to make big enough to make a 3x4 card, so there was no way I was going to do another layout. So I took the strip, that border strip, and to kind of make that less of a white cardstock 3x4 area, I added that border strip to it, and then that can of flowers. And I thought those worked super perfect right there. I am playing with this title now, Dream, and I don't know if I mentioned, but that's just kind of a harder word for me to use. There's different layouts I could use that on. I really liked the red because it went with the flowers, but it just wasn't working for me. And I'm going to play around a little bit more. I really wanted to use up the rest of this border sticker. The other thing that's throwing me off is the fact that those photos are crooked. So I not only have to find a title that's going to stand out, but I have to find one that's not going to look funny, crooked. So whatever it's going to say, if that makes any sense. So I wasn't sure what I wanted the title to be. We're just in front of a field of poppies. So I'm going to actually just make the title be poppies. I'm going to start out with the word poppy. I think I was going to maybe do poppy filled or by the poppy, or I don't know what I was going to do, but I'm actually looking at my phone now just to make sure that I'm looking up not only right that I was poppy flowers, but that I'm spelling it right. I knew it was an IES if you made it multiple, but I didn't know for single. So but like I said, I end up going ahead and changing it to say poppies, and that's all I'm going to do. Like I said, I thought about writing beautiful poppies or some kind of adding some other word to it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to kind of leave it with poppies, and it's good enough. The main focus of this layout to me is the pictures, and I'm not going to add any journaling. It's these are pictures. If you have watched all my videos, my very first layout was from Wallowa Lake, and these are some poppy. This is a poppy field we saw around then, so this is from that same trip. So I don't really have any journaling. We're just in front of these really pretty flowers. We were having fun taking pictures in front of these flowers, and there's no more story to it than that. So that's going to be my title, poppies. I am going to work a little bit more with that area, and no, that title doesn't stand out too much. It does stand out a little bit more in person than it does on camera, but it works for me. And they're a little bit sparkly, so I kind of liked that too. Those letter stickers are, I want to say they look like Doodlebug letter stickers, but I'm not 100% sure. So I went back to working on this right-hand side again, and I don't know if you noticed, but I did go ahead and washi tape down my layout again, and I really liked it. It kept everything in place for me. So I put down that watering can with some foam tape, and it's also that photo is kind of behind the row of flowers, that border sticker. I knew that I wanted to use this tag. It says love the little moments. So I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to add a little foam. So it's basically, sorry, I'm getting a little bit distracted. Sorry. It's kind of flat underneath where the bottom of the tag is, but I did add some foam tape underneath the top. So it's a little bit of dimension there, but not, the foam tape that I use is not super dimensional most of the time anyways. I do have some, but I don't like to use super dimensional ones. But so it just has a little bit of movement. And I'm looking again at the stickers, knowing that this is the last layout that I'm going to do. So I tried to play around. Plus, like I've mentioned before, these gnomes are pretty darn cute, so I wanted to use them. There are no other gnomes on this page. I'm not worried about it. Some of the word stickers I'm going to use, one says Nomi, one says Lucky, one says Hip Hop. None of those really go with this page, but I don't care. They're cute and I want to use them. So I did try to use this blue sticker. I'm going to play around with it just a little bit. I added that gnome guy there in the middle, and I believe I added him, yep, with some foam tape. I figured I kind of needed, I'm not really going by the clusters that are on the sketch at this point, because just what I have isn't going to work for, I didn't really like the fact, I think that they're, if I remember right, it could be another layout, but I didn't want to put the cluster on the right-hand side of the page halfway up, because it was like this little flower pot with these 3 flowers. I wanted them to be more down on the ground. And so there's not going to be a huge like triangle or anything like that. There's really not going to be any embellishments more than maybe halfway up the page, but I'm okay with that. So you will see how as the layout goes along. So I added that jar of the tulips. I thought it was really cute right next to that little pot of the other flowers in the right-hand cluster there. I love how that came together. I did add that Hello Happiness, and I added some foam tape underneath that next to that small picture. I'm adding more of these pieces around, just again, literally trying to use them up. I love how it's looking. Look at that sticker sheet. It's almost empty. There was this one little pot with a plant in it, and I thought it was so cute. Once I set it next to that gnome, I fell in love. Now, it is right in the middle of the layout, so it does get cut in half so that part of it will go with on the right-hand side and part will go on the left-hand side. That doesn't bother me at all. Again, it's still there. And to me, I'm going to look at it as one full page and not separate pages. So I was going to cut it right there, but I figured I would just wait until I was done. Here's those 3 words I was talking about that don't even really go with the page. I thought about maybe putting them here to kind of build up this cluster in the middle a little bit more, but that just did not look right. And again, I didn't want to bring a whole bunch of attention to that picture of me. Not that I think I don't deserve to be in the scrapbooks. I just wasn't, I don't know, I'm not that crazy about the picture, and I didn't want this layout to be just about me. You know what I mean? So I'm going to put them on the left-hand side here, and I just kind of tuck them in, and still playing again with this border sticker. So now I'm going to come up with the best idea for this border sticker. I am going to actually make it look, I'm going to pull up some of this watering can and that picture, and I'm going to make it look like there's more than one row of flowers underneath this, like, or behind that watering can. I'm going to make it so you still see the white behind the flowers, but that's just because it's part of the sticker and you don't really notice. And it actually looks really cute. It fills up more of that just plain white 3x4 card. And it just gives a little bit, and it uses up more of that border sticker. So I really like how that looks. So by the time I'm done with this white 3x4 card, I think it comes together pretty well. So just looking around now, and I saved out the same enamel dots that I had used on the first layout, and then I noticed these 2 butterflies. Again, I'm using up some butterflies. I'm so excited. They're enamel shapes that I've had forever. There's only 2 of them. I'm not worried about it not being an odd number, so I'm going to add a blue one of those blue butterflies over here in the very right-hand cluster, and then I'm going to take the other one and add it to the other side of the page. And I feel like that kind of brings, you know, that helps your eye go from page to page, because it's not just in, you know, they're not both on the same right-hand side or in the same cluster. So, but it is okay if they were, because there are so many other things going on in the layout that it doesn't matter too much. So I am going around and I'm adding the blue butterflies in a couple clusters. And again, another one of those white, like somewhat enamel shapes, and one of the kind of greenish ones that don't really go with anything, but I still used it anyway. And then I added those around the page, and then I wanted a little something more. So out of the scraps that I have, I took my Martha Stewart heart punch. I love this punch. If you need some tiny little hearts for anything, which you will see more of later on, and I hope I did just cover that up, darn it. This is a great punch to have, because it punches out like tons of little hearts, and you can use them all over. So here's a good look at basically a lot of what I have left as far as scraps go, which is in that little bowl. And I'm so happy about that, but I will talk more about that in the next video. So I'm just figuring out where I wanted to put these hearts. I wanted to kind of maybe add a blue one in this corner over here. I'm going to add some, I don't know what I was doing there with that little tool. I'm going to add some to the middle cluster, or like the 3x4 card, a couple of hearts to that little area, and that's going to help fill in that a little bit. I am adding a tiny bit of inking to the edges of these hearts, just to again help them stand out a little bit, because there's, you know, it needs a little help for them to stand out on this layout, I felt like. And I did add that blue banner that says enjoy every moment. Again, it was kind of a use it up, but I still loved it, and you can see me there. I'm like, oh yay, it's it's looking good. I'm loving it. So yeah, I'm just again adding around just those hearts everywhere here and there. So a little bit of a spoiler alert, not in this video, and not even in the end video or end pictures that I have at the end, I am going to mount this layout on some red cardstock. At first, I'm going to look at it and go back and forth and not be able to decide. But looking at it again today when I went to do the recap video for this series, which I plan to do so you guys can see the scraps and everything like that, I just kind of felt like it really, you know me, I'm just really into, since there's so much of that white space, I wanted to mount it. So I found some close to my heart a long time ago. They had like these designer papers, and again, you won't see it in these videos, but you will see it in the recap video. But I did mount this entire layout on some red, and it's got like this subtle pattern underneath it. But here's a couple close-ups. You can see I love this. This was so much fun doing it with this collection, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. All right, have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.